Real men don't get mad and punch walls. They punch boulders and bring down giant bats at 400 yards with a 9mm handgun. They also know that it's not duct tape or WD-40 that can solve all your problems. It's a good old-fashioned rocket launcher. So said the Japanese writers at Capcom when they created Chris Redfield. Redfield is their take on the all-American hero. He's the globe-trotting soldier with a quarterback's poise, a pro wrestler body, and Hollywood hair. He's a likable stereotype without a deep background, but in this video I will explain the qualities that make Chris Redfield uniquely American and indisputably cool. Chris is an idealist. He believes the struggle against biological terrorism, the great evil of the Resident Evil world, must be fought to the finish, no matter where and when. Haters would call him an interventionist. His unit, the BSAA, is modeled like a United Nations that actually does something, and it acts like the American troops who freed Ramadi in Iraq. Chris knows what those American troops know. There are some people in the world who only respond to a good kick in the ass. Being nice to those people only gives them more power. For Redfield, Wesker is the biggest dirtbag in need of a kick in the ass, and although that's a personal vendetta, Chris knows the mission is bigger than his revenge. Chris is obviously the American tough guy trope. He was touted as a rebel in the first game, but by Resident Evil 5, he's like the paragon of discipline. He offers to finish the mission alone. There's no place for self-pity in his actions or his vocabulary. His disposition is modeled after Navy SEALs and Green Berets, whose language is always clear, simple, and straightforward.
You grab it! Come on!
Chris also trains endlessly. It's apparent in the way he moves. It's also apparent in his muscle mass. Yes, I'm sure he uses steroids. There probably should be a needle sticking out of his butt at the beginning of the game. But as a friend of mine said, if I had to fight Wesker, I'd use steroids too. Here's a fun fact. Redfield is 35 in Resident Evil 5, which is 1 year over the typical age range of Navy SEALs. Here's Tim Kennedy's perspective on old Special Forces warriors who use steroids.
We have a Special Forces guy. He's 38 years old. This is his 6th, 7th combat tour. We're doing 2, 3, 4 hits a night. Hits, like missions. We're doing mission, follow-up mission, follow-up mission. We're doing a helicopter, landing. We're doing a gaff where we're on a ground assault force. And this guy's broken. He's hurt. He physically can't keep up. He needs it. Do I want the 38-year-old dude next to me that's on steroids, or do I want the one that can barely walk because everything hurts so bad? I want the 38-year-old on steroids.
Chris may suffer long-term consequences for the roid use, but he knows the consequences for failing his mission are much worse. He's already lost a city full of neighbors to biological weapons. He's also unmarried, and he's the best soldier in the BSAA. He makes sacrifices for the mission, even when he has doubts. Good men, good soldiers, and good fathers everywhere know that their vocation involves giving up short-term pleasures for long-term good. That's something you see broadly across the heartland of America. When Jill and Sheva go into battle with Chris, he never questions their ability. Though you have to suspend your disbelief at women who weigh maybe $130 throwing around half-ton monsters, the important point is that Chris treats them as equals. There are few places where this is more likely than in America, and the prevalence of empowered women in cultures around the world is largely thanks to Hollywood. When Resident Evil 5 was released, the typical conversation about Chris Redfield was that he was too big, too roided out. But that's the point. The Japanese creators simply exaggerated his muscles. They know that Americans love brawny action movie stars. I think the men who responded negatively to Chris's appearance were jarred by a sense of inadequacy. I don't think it's necessary to be shredded to be a strong man. But if a video game character makes somebody feel insecure, it's not about the video game character. So there's one Easter egg conversation in Resident Evil 5 that contradicts my analysis of Chris.
Wouldn't you rather be back in America than a place like this?
Not necessarily. Some people might think America has its own dark side.
That doesn't sound very patriotic.
I'm just a realist. It's a capitalist society. Not everyone is cut out for that kind of constant pressure. Sure, there are opportunities to be had, but at what price? You gain, someone else loses.
Here Chris displays both pessimism and a belief in scarcity economics. Neither of those is particularly American. Further, Chris paints people in a capitalist society as helpless victims. Because self-pity is the cardinal sin of Special Forces types, it's highly unlikely that Chris would excuse anybody from responsibility for their own well-being. He knows the world is a hard place, and he knows that personal responsibility is the only way to find fulfillment. And besides, those zombies and tyrants, they're not going to kill themselves. But the writers were trying to be trendy. Resident Evil 5 was released in 2009, not long after President Barack Obama brought identity politics to the forefront of American culture. The race began to be the biggest victim. The writers should have stuck to heroes and monsters. There's no place for identity politics in a universe where you have problems like becoming something's dinner. Another thing, this time so dumb I'm sad to have to include it. In Resident Evil 6, Chris becomes an angry drunk because he loses his team. That is a terrible contradiction. What happened in the first game? Oh yeah, near annihilation of his team. But that time, he didn't get the sads. He got ready. So what do you think? Is Chris the all-American hero? Is there a better example out there? And did I miss anything? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you love Resident Evil, you might like Resident Evil Germination. It's an audio drama about the discovery of Progenitor and the early days of the Archetype Mansion. Thank you for watching.